Hey there, Mike Robbins here on June 30th, the last day of the month, the last day of the quarter, the last day of the first half of 2021. Coming a little earlier than I normally do. It's 9:35 Pacific time. I want to talk about taking breaks. Are you ready for a break? Do you need a break? Do you want a break? Do you wish you could have a break? All of the above. Yeah, so I've done some podcast episodes over the last few years on the importance of taking breaks. I did one actually already this week. If you follow my podcast, you probably heard that episode because I think we posted it yesterday. Um, Look, I need a break. I think most everybody I know these days could use a break. Um, Here we are halfway through the year of 2021. I was just writing in my journal this morning and realizing, by the way, if you're joining live on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on YouTube, feel free to chime in on in the comments or in the chat there. Just let me know where you are and how you're doing and what's going on. If you're watching the video of this after the fact, you can also leave a comment. I tend to look at those. But yeah, I was writing in my journal this morning and I was just reflecting on the fact that, 2021 started in January, 6 months ago. And I remember just feeling this energy of like, okay, 2020 was brutal and so intense and challenging with COVID and all of the understandable outrage related to, racism and inequality and, the election here in the US and just so much stuff. And it had been a super intense, challenging year for most everybody I know and for the world, the country, the world. And 2021 felt like it wasn't going to magically overnight change, but it's like, okay, something new is going to happen. Hey, Celeste, you take more breaks than you should. Well, I don't know about that. I'm not sure we can overdo it on breaks if you actually take them consciously. So good for you. I think I find myself in the opposite category of not taking nearly enough breaks. But anyway, thinking about this year, it was like I had this expectation that this year was going to be different. It's going to be better. And it's clearly been different. And in some ways, I think there are some aspects we could say are better, but it's been challenging for me and for just about everybody I know. Hey, Martha, good to see you. Hope things are good in Kansas City. So yeah, you need a break, right? And you have a hard time taking breaks, including during vacations. You know what's interesting about that, Martha? So this whole thing about taking breaks in general, I find personally that it's really challenging for me to take breaks. And some of it, I think about it, like growing up, I don't think I had this issue as much. And I think when we're in school, there's built-in breaks. And I also played baseball for many years, and there was built-in breaks. There was kind of a cadence, a season, and then it was over, and then you got to take a break. And in school, it was like, spring break and winter break and summer break, and the finals would end and classes would end or the term would end, and it would be like this. Okay, I earned it. I worked hard. Now I can take a break. Once I stopped school, and then I got to play baseball for a few years after school, but then got injured and my pro career ended. I noticed that. Hey, Adriana, nice to see you in San Francisco. I'm up here in Marin, so not far from you. The break thing in the real world, in our professional lives, is more challenging, right? For those of you who work for a big company or a small company, you work for someone else, you get maybe 2 weeks vacation, 3 weeks vacation. If you work somewhere long enough, some of the tech companies will give people sabbaticals that'll be 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever the case may be. But that's pretty much it. And, there's holidays and different times you get days off of work. But nowadays, especially, it's that much harder because we all have phones. You're probably watching me on a phone or a laptop. Hey, B, good to see you. So you didn't start taking breaks till your son went to college. So you're in San Diego. Yeah. And then again, you have kids. And it becomes challenging, right? Celeste, being afraid to take breaks. I mean, then during COVID, it's been even weirder because we're at home in a lot of cases. And it's like, when can I take a break? And then for me, I went and worked for a couple of internet companies after my baseball career ended, and the whole sort of, oh, there's no summer break in the real world. There's no spring break. There's no winter break. It's just you're working all the time. You have to take your own breaks whenever. And, I was young and in my 20s. I don't even remember how much vacation time I took because I only worked for a couple different companies for just a few years. Then I started my own business 20 years ago. And taking breaks when you own your own business or you work for yourself, especially in the early days when you don't really have much of a business going, that's a challenge. Because if I don't work, I don't make any money. And 20 years later, even though it's grown and evolved and I have a few people on the team, and it's not like there's still that tendency to feel like I have to be working all the time. And again, I think with our devices, even to Martha's point about it's hard to take breaks even when we're on vacation. Just think about how hard it is to unplug and to relax. Have you ever gone on vacation for like a week, and by the end of the vacation, maybe the day before or even the day you leave, you finally are like, okay, I'm relaxed. And then you got to pack and go, right? It's like, so it can be hard to do that for a lot of reasons, but it's so important for us to take breaks. And it's not all just about going on vacation, because look, maybe now you're vaccinated and or you live in a part of the country or the world where you feel safe enough that you could get on a plane or drive somewhere and go on vacation. And maybe not. And maybe we don't have the resources, or maybe we don't have the time, or maybe we have kids of a certain age and it's challenging. Again, the reasons why it's difficult for us to take breaks can be personal, they can be financial, they can be practical, they can be emotional, they can be relational, social. What's the norm? What's the expectation? I was talking to someone who just got a job working at a startup a few months ago, and he was saying nobody takes breaks. Like nobody has any time off. At least they haven't since I've started. So he was feeling self-conscious. And Kareem, to your point, right? You don't often realize that you need a break until you take one. Have you ever had like a really good night's sleep and then realized when you woke up in the morning, oh my gosh, I've been exhausted for like days or weeks or months, but I finally got rested. And now I realize, yeah, Martha, right. I'm just reading your comment, right? Part of this is self-imposed, but part of it is work culture and anxiety about remote work, not visibly delivering work in front of others. So yeah, it's changed in a weird way. I mean, with COVID, it's like initially we couldn't really go anywhere and do anything. We were all locked down at home. So taking a break was just meaning I'm just not on Zoom. I'm just not on Microsoft Teams. I'm just not on the computer. But so there's this anxiety, this pressure, this expectation. But it's super important for us to be able to take breaks. In fact, you think about this in a physical sense, right? Like I'm a former professional baseball player. So I spent a good part of my young life, especially working out and exercising. Not that I don't still work out and exercise, but not to the same degree. But one of the things I remember learning from some of the strength trainers that I worked with when I was in my late teens and in my early 20s was the importance of rest. That basically it was like rest in between sets, in between reps, rest in between days of working out. So we would do upper body workouts one day and then lower body workouts the next day. And the reason being is the trainers would tell us, you got to rest your upper body. You only want to do that 2 or 3 times a week or every other day or every 3 days or whatever it is, because the most important part of the workout is the rest in between. That's where the muscles actually grow and get stronger. And when I think about this in terms of we live in this world that the idea is just work, 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 go, 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 produce, produce, produce. And at some level, not only do we get burned out and potentially get sick and cause problems for ourselves, but we're actually less effective at being able to do what we do. And so sometimes in life, we're forced to take breaks. Something happens, a tragedy happens, we get sick, we get injured. I mean, those are pretty intense ones. Sometimes it's simply just, again, the work week happens and it's the weekend comes. And again, depending on our mindset and what we do and how much we enjoy it or how intense it is or what the expectation is, that can vary a bit. But taking breaks is something that we can practice internally. And again, it's something I've never been all that good at, to be completely honest, especially over the last couple of decades working for myself and not having those built-in sort of forced breaks. But one of the things, and one of the reasons why I'm coming live today to share this, is I'm planning on taking a bit of a break from some things right now for a couple reasons. There's some things going on in my life personally, and there's also some changes going on our team. And so what I've decided to do is to dial back on some stuff in my business specifically. So this will be my last social live, most likely for a month or two. I've decided to put the podcast on hiatus for a month or two, maybe a little bit longer. My email newsletter, some of the things that I do on a regular basis that I enjoy doing, that I'm grateful that I get to do, that I have amazing people like all of you who are watching this, who engage with me and my work and are interested in some of the ideas or stories or principles that I share. Thank you. But I need a break. I'm tired. There's been a lot going on, and it's important, right? And B, that's great that you took a break all day yesterday and it felt great. Like, being able to surrender and actually relax and disengage from things is super important. So figuring out, and look, sometimes, I mean, I'm going to stay working over the next couple months with our clients and delivering, virtual programs. And then I'm starting to get booked to do some things in person. I've got something actually in a couple weeks. It's a 3-day long in-person strategy session for one of our clients that I'm excited to get to facilitate. I'll be getting on an airplane once or twice in August to go speak at events out of town, which will be something I haven't done since March of last year. So I'm looking forward to that. But for me, this break from some of the things on social and the podcast and the email newsletter and other things is just kind of, for me, kind of pulling back a little bit, going a little more inward, reflecting on some things, some changes with our team and some things going on in my personal life have just really humbled me in a good way, and in some of a painful way, but important to have me stop and go, the universe is giving me some messages that it's time to reflect, it's time to rethink some things. And here we are. Today's the last day of June, the last day of Q2, the second quarter, the last day of H1, the first half of the year. And I think this is a good time for all of us to stop and pause and reflect. If you follow me in my work, every year around the holidays and as we move through, Hanukkah and Christmas and then into New Year's, I do a lot of reflecting on the year that's ending and creating for the year that is coming. And I feel like this is a really important thing for us to do personally, for us to do with our families, for us to do with our teams. I mean, there's the practical part of kind of planning and budgeting and all that we do in business, but there's also just the taking personal inventory. Last year, or a couple of years ago, even before COVID, I started doing kind of a mid-year check-in and doing a little mini version. But last year, I felt like it was really important because I wanted to, the first half of last year, those last couple months, March, April, May, June, had been brutal, really hard and scary and intense, and COVID and the economy and George Floyd's murder and all of the protests and things going on, and just all of everything that was happening politically, socially here in the US. And I just felt like I wanted to kind of start fresh with July 1 of last year, thinking, okay, this is the beginning of the second half of this year. Maybe it can go differently. And although the second half of 2020 was still intense in different kind of ways, and then the first half of 2021 has been intense in different kind of ways, I just feel like, arbitrary lines of demarcation, the end of months or quarters or years, birthdays, anniversaries, we can actually take those opportunities to, stop, pause, reflect. Yeah, role modeling, taking a break has a ripple effect. Absolutely, Martha. And Julia, it's nice to see you. I hope you're doing well. It's been a while since we were in touch. So you're a big believer in listening to the universe, right? Moving with it rather than against it. Absolutely. That's important. Listening to the universe, right? A number of years ago, I talked to a man named Stuart Crabb, who I had met at a Wisdom 2.0 conference, probably 2010, maybe, so 10, 11 years ago. And at the time, he was head of learning and development at Facebook. And Facebook was, already quite big, but had just grown incredibly over the previous few years. And it was one of the hottest places to work in Silicon Valley and in the country and the world. But they were just growing by leaps and bounds. And Stu said to me, this notion that life is a marathon, not a sprint, we say a lot. People say that a lot in business. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And he said, but who are we kidding? We're sprinting all the time, especially at a place like Facebook in those days when it was just, massively growing. And he said, so what we've learned is that we're not going to slow down. In fact, we're probably going to speed up. So we're not going to stop sprinting, but we have to learn how to pause. individually, because otherwise we'll burn ourselves out, we'll stress ourselves out, we'll overwork ourselves, and collectively. So anyone who's a manager of people and anyone who's interested in the culture and the well-being of the people around, we have to encourage each other to pause. So that role modeling, Martha, that you're speaking about is really important. And can we also be mindful of sort of worshiping, overworking? That it's somehow, I only slept 3 hours last night, or I worked all weekend. Again, if you choose to do that because you really want to, or there's a deadline, or there's a project, or you're passionate about it, that's great. But realize ultimately that your wellness and well-being and the wellness and well-being of the people around you is really important, and especially right now. Because on the one hand, it might seem harder to take breaks these days for a myriad of reasons, COVID related and otherwise. It's also more important than ever. And the ability to disconnect, to unplug, to close the laptop, to turn off the phone, which is hard, isn't it? We used to do unplugged Sundays at our house like 10 years ago when the girls were young, and Michelle and I would turn our phones and computers off on Saturday and then wouldn't turn them back on until Monday morning. And I noticed I would wake up Monday morning like, but now, because so much of my life and just communication and moving around in the world is like, it's almost impossible to turn off the phone. I mean, I don't have to look at work email. I don't have to check certain things, but it's just like, it's hard to make my way through the world even without my iPhone, which is kind of scary when I think about it. So a couple things for you to think about. And again, taking breaks isn't all about, getting on a plane and flying to Hawaii, although that's great. Nothing wrong with that. If you have the means to do that and the time and the resources and you're, privileged enough, go for it, or wherever your destination spot is for a vacation. But yeah, if we can take a break, like a trip, get away somewhere that really inspires us, relaxes us, do that. But you can take a break at home. You can take a break just going for a walk. You can take a break just closing your eyes in your office and meditating. There are a lot of different ways to take breaks throughout the day, over the course of weeks and months. And here we are at summertime. So, if you have kids, they're out of school, and that can often be its own challenge depending on the age of your kids. But look for ways you might be able to take a break or breaks right now in your life. Can you chunk out some time even in your calendar? I'm not going to do Zoom meetings for this chunk of time. I'm not going to be on my email or whatever. And, can you find a way to, even if you are fortunate enough to go away on a vacation where you can actually power down? It's so important. So I'll be taking a break from my podcast, from my email newsletter, and most likely from these social media lives over the next month to maybe more, maybe less. It'll sort of depend, but I need to just dial some things back, take a break, go within, reflect on some things. So my hope is that you'll have the opportunity to do some version of that in whatever way serves you over the course of the next few days, few weeks, few months over this summer. And, just be gentle with yourself and everyone around you. Like, this has been and continues to be an incredibly challenging time. I think coming through it, if you will, I know we're not all the way through it by any stretch. And I know things are different in different parts of the country and the world. And we're now dealing with the Delta variant and all this stuff. And we're hearing reports of, mask mandates in Los Angeles or lockdowns in Singapore and Sydney, and, the virus still raging in India and things like that. I think things opening up, as great as that is also reminding all of us, it definitely is for me and so many people I'm talking to, of just how traumatic this whole experience has been. So part of taking a break or a series of breaks is just to kind of care for ourselves, love ourselves, have compassion for ourselves, nurture ourselves and the people around us. So I will see you again whenever I see you again. You can stay connected with me here on social. We'll still be posting some content and things throughout the next couple months, and I might pop on here myself live. And I'm still doing my work. I'm not going away. I'm just going to take a hiatus from a few of the things that we produce and put out into the world for a few months, just to reground and recenter myself. But I'm grateful for you. Thanks for watching this video, either live, and I appreciate all the comments, B, Martha, Ray, Kareem, Julia, Norma, the rest of you that have chimed in live. And if you're watching the video of this, again, feel free to chime in. Oh, one other little quick announcement that I'll make before I leave. Today's the final day, June 30th, where my most recent book, We're All in This Together, is available in ebook format for just $1.99. We got a note from our publisher that they were running this promotion, but it ends today. So if you don't happen to have that book and want it, you can get it for $2, $1.99 on Kindle or Nook or Apple Books or whatever e-reader you use. So just go check that out. And thanks for joining. Be well. I will talk to you again probably in a few months. Take care.